they found that for cold emails, you're somewhere, for outreach, you're getting somewhere between like a 1%, if that sort of response. And we have, very, very easily, we get somewhere in the range of like 15 to 20% positive responses for our outreach, because we're not just asking someone to get a coffee, or we're not just asking for someone for time. We're providing something for them. And again, there are ways and wrong ways to do this. We call it the timeshare effect. And there are plenty of podcasts that take advantage of this in the wrong way. But when done the right way, you can really have people who are excited to work with you and excited to chat with you. And if you follow the rest of our sort of process, really excited to go through the sales, the sales process. A couple of key tips, though. A couple of things. The first is don't just interview anybody, because that was a mistake that we made early on, was just bringing on anybody onto the show, thinking that if we just talk to people, that's going to turn into business. And you might get lucky and you might sort of fall into a client or fall into a partnership, but it's much, much more, you're much more likely to do that if you are really clear on who it is that you're inviting on. And so who your ideal guests are should really be thought through. And you should really think about, bringing on the guests that are going to open up the most doors, not just necessarily the ones that are going to be the easiest to get on. And so we utilize we call it multi-modal invite process, but it's basically, what does this mean? What we're doing is we are inviting people in multiple different, capacities. And the reason is that people are, again, getting bombarded with so many messages, and oftentimes it's not at the top of their list to be checking for these things, and it's not always that they're getting these sorts of invites. And so we've got to find a way to make sure that we get seen. And so what we recommend is inviting them via social media, so reaching out via social media. We like LinkedIn because there's some ways that you can get the contact information and reach out on LinkedIn. But then also, we have some electronic and some cool ways to be able to get people's email addresses as well. And we recommend sending them an email and inviting them on there. And again, through this multimodal outreach process, we find that we're able to get 15 to 20% of people excited and positive to come on and have a recording with us, where we can work what we call the interview funnel and take them through the process into our sort of pipeline. And so the reason that we established this is we found that the difference is in the relationship, right? It's actually in the time and the trust that is developed over this period of time, because early on, we would just come on, interview people, and think that that was going to be enough for them to turn into clients. And the challenge is that there wasn't enough of a relationship. There wasn't enough of a trust. We weren't able to establish ourselves and that expertise that we had in just a short period of time. And so since then, we've sort of tried to figure out what are the steps in the process that we can engineer to allow that relationship and that trust to be built, and also for us to be able to demonstrate that expertise to them in a way that feels good to them, in a way that feels value driven, in a way that is not the timeshare effect. And so really there's five sort of parts to this process. The first is the invite, and we talked about that a little bit. Multimodal, right? Reaching out via social, via LinkedIn, that's huge. The second thing is the pre-call, and the pre-call is a huge opportunity for it's something that's done with a lot of shows, and it's something that's done for a lot of comfort reasons, to get the host and the guest comfortable with each other. A lot of times they'll talk about the episode topics or get some synergy there. But I think it's also a really valuable opportunity for business owners to start the discovery process, because they're naturally and rightfully so, their guard is not up. It's not a sales opportunity yet. It's a great time to, again, build the trust, build the connection, but also start to ask questions that can give you insight into whether or not you can help them and whether you can provide solution to them as well. So that way, when you go to the interview, you can focus on having a great interview. And some people like to conduct an interview that sort of creates a coaching call like environment or creates a consulting like sort of environment. But what's most important is that the trust and the relationship is already built. And so they are much more likely to inquire about what it is, asking questions about what it is that you do. Hey, Michael, it's good to see you.
Hey, my friend.
I was recording just in case for the people. It seems like Thanksgiving week, so I know people are a little busy. Happy to dive in and modify this and make sure this is relevant for you. We're sort of talking about how to leverage the podcast, as a way to get ideal guests on and turn those guests on into clients. And so this, after the interview, we find is the place where really the magic happens. And there's not a whole lot of selling done up until this point, but if done the right way, you can, and you're asking the right questions, there's inevitably this opportunity or this moment where the guest goes, so what is it that you do? Tell me about what it is that you do, because they feel like they've been sharing so much about them, and you've been asking so many questions about them, that if you are able to ask the right questions and poke and prod in sort of the right way, then there's this inevitable moment where they're essentially asking you to sell. And so our biggest tip is to have some sort of value-filled follow-up that you can offer to them. And that can be a lead magnet, that can be a consulting call, that can be an email series, but something to say, hey, I don't know if it would be helpful, but I have this thing that can definitely help with the challenges that we were talking about earlier on the call. Can I send it to you? Do you want to schedule, would it be okay to schedule some time to talk about that or share that with you? Or can I send that to you, in an email? But having this value-filled follow-up is a really critical point in transitioning the individuals from just a guest into a potential prospect. So I'll pause there, and Michael, see if there's any particular questions that you wanted or things that you wanted to make sure to cover, or happy to just keep running through this this deck that I put together as well. Say that again. I didn't catch it.
Oh, can you hear me?
Now I can, yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay, I was going to send you a chat. Forgot about that. Anyway, hey, great information so far, and it's good seeing you again. But I think you covered everything, so I'm just going to listen, and if you have any feedback, I'll chime in.
Yeah, chime in if there's anything that isn't clear or that you wanted to dive in more. Inevitably, though, there becomes this moment or this time where people go, I don't want just more phone calls, or I don't, it would be great for me to get out of that place where my day is filled up with all the, phone calls. And I think that is always the draw and the allure of having a podcast is, what if the content can be working for you? What if the content can be doing the selling for you, building the trust for you? I think that's sort of the holy grail when it comes to creating content, is that if we can get to a place where people are coming to us ready to buy, I think that makes things so much easier. The sales process is so much easier. It feels so much better. It's so much lighter. And then ultimately, I think that there's a point in which you can scale that's beyond you having to be there shaking hands, kissing babies, that sort of face-to-face thing that is required often in so many sales scenarios, because it requires trust, and trust has often been built through that time. But now there's an opportunity for people to do that without needing to be there. And so we call it the industry celebrity pay playbook, but I liken it to being like the big fish in a small pond. And I remember, growing up in going to sort of private Catholic school, and then having to go and go to a different public school, and seeing the difference in just in the size of the community, right? And I always remembered it's having this sort of a realization that it was much easier to be a bigger fish in a small pond than a big fish in this big pond. Or what ends up happening is that there's all these smaller fish in this sort of big pond. And I've sort of carried that with me into content, and thinking about, well, how do we create, how do we make sure that we are the big fish in the small pond, or that old adage of shooting fish in a barrel? How do we gather and create our barrels so that way it's much easier? And I think that we sort of stumbled upon, or we've definitely worked through some things to be able to create that and manufacture that sort of effect. And so the first thing that we say is to identify your barrel, because it's very easy to put your podcast out there and just hope that the right people are going to see it. That the internet and Apple and Spotify and YouTube, I mean, it is this vast ecosystem where you can find almost anything out there. And so if you are not sort of intentional about where you want to be seen, or what pond you want to be known in, it's very easy for you to just end up in that big pond sort of scenario. And so getting clear about your barrel, right? Getting clear about your specific pond is important. And this can be niche, this can be industry, this can be geographically located. There's so many ways to sort of divvy up the pie, if you will. But clarity at least tells you, for our next part, where to promote it, where to distribute it, and how to market it. Because you may not be able to reach everybody. And Michael, before you hopped on, we talked about not necessarily making a show for everybody, but making the show for a particular somebody. And again, once we have clarity with that, the next parts become a lot easier. Okay. So to kind of continue on with the sort of the analogy or the metaphor of catching fish in a barrel, or looking for the big fish in a small pond, the way that we attract our listeners, the way our lure, if you will, is the types of content that we create. And I've seen it happen so many times where people, they put out great content and they put out really valuable stuff, and they're really sharing their expertise, but no one is resonating with it. No one is liking it. No one's engaging with it. And it can be really frustrating, because people are like, I'm putting out so much good stuff. There's so much valuable wisdom and insights and knowledge and frameworks and all these things that they put into the content, and no one seems to be caring about it. And really the shift is that it's a simple shift. And it's really about shifting from talking about solutions and even your product to really talking about the problems and the challenges that people are going through. And it can be as simple as shifting from, well, not talking about, your specific weight loss routine, but talking about why people struggle to lose weight. It's not about, talking about your organization sort of method, but it's actually speaking about why people feel scattered or disorganized, or why they're always late. It's really about speaking to the problems that people have, speaking to their challenges, speaking to what they're going through, and then leading them through that to your solutions. Because there's that old adage of people don't care about what you know until they know that you care. The way that you demonstrate your caring, or your ability to care, is by showing them that you know what problems they're going through, that you can speak to the challenges that they're experiencing. And at that point, they don't care who you are, what you look like, how good the quality of the video is. If you have if you know the problem that they're in, they're at least going to stop and at least give you a few seconds to hear if you can help fix their problem. So it's really important to just shift. It's a simple shift of content. It might even just be a simple shift of the episode titles or the hook or sort of how they get there. And really the actual content can be much of the same. It's just really about, changing the perspective of it.
Okay. So basically solving someone's problem in a
Speaking
way.
to their problems,
Yeah, speaking to the problems.
speaking to their problems
Instead of speaking of what we want to talk about, try
instead
to
of
solve a
speaking to their
problem.
solutions, right?
Yes. Okay.
And that's hard for a lot of teachers. That's hard for a lot of coaches. That's hard for people who have the answers, because
Hmm.
they're like, this is the answer. When most people, it's not that they don't know the answer, it's that they need to be receptive to it. They need to be open to it, both from a listening standpoint, but then they also need to be sort of ready to take up the solution. We've all heard the, from the parent who's like, we know better, and it's like, well, we know that we know better. We just need to figure out why we're not doing what we want to be doing, right? And that's oftentimes coming at it from the problems and why people are stuck and why people are, the obstacles that they're facing. And if you can reach them there, then they'll, a lot of times they're willing to try whatever solution it is that you have. Because that's sort of what we've realized is that it's not about speaking to the masses, right? It's about getting your message in front of the right sort of people. And to your point, Michael, it's about them understanding that you have the answer, or that you can help them, which is so much of what people are looking for in content. Is, can I relate to this person? Do they understand me? Do they know what I'm going through enough for me to give them my email address, for me to pay to coach with them, to join a course, or like whatever it is that we are sort of asking them to do. They've got to know that we understand them before anything.
Perfect.
That's what I'd say about that.
Perfect.
Once you've got some content that is going to, that is helpful, that resonates with people, what we really encourage to our hosts is not going for the masses, but going for the micro, right? Targeted distribution over mass promotion. And I'll tell you that the difference is that what used to work is just posting to social media and putting it on Facebook, or just kind of sending it out there and hoping that the right people would see it. Again, there's so much noise out there. There's so much content that if we are not putting it on a platter and sort of spoon feeding it to people, it's often that they're not going to see it. Another sort of big realization that people, I think, need to have is that a very small select people are actually going to listen to the full episode and consume the full episode, whether that's even on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. And so many people think that having a podcast is about people watching it on YouTube or listening on Apple and Spotify, when they've found that so much of the impact that happens from the show is not necessarily just from that, but it's from the clips that people see on wherever they're catching their clips. It's from the blog articles or the newsletters that they're reading on LinkedIn or Substack or wherever it is. It's actually, what's great about a podcast is that it can be taken and repackaged and repurposed and reformed in so many different ways. And some people like to listen to long form audios, but some people like to just browse, quickly. Some people like to listen to long form episodes, but some people like to just browse the articles or catch the summaries or read, the transcripts even. I think that they're, I don't know how fun they'd be at a cocktail party, but they're out there. And so the point is that I'm not here to judge about how someone's going to consume the content. My job as a business owner, and what I'm trying to do with making this content, is to try and reach and affect people in as many ways as possible. And so that oftentimes looks like creating a newsletter or creating something on LinkedIn, or putting it where people are, where you can really send it to somebody, whether that's via email or a LinkedIn message, or there are some places like TikTok and Instagram where you can sort of lean on the algorithm, and if you're having the right sort of videos, you can sort of leverage that. But the point is that if we're not intentional about where we're promoting it and marketing it, and we're just sort of having this spray and pray mentality, then it's very unlikely that it's going to end up in the hands of the right people. And so we again, going like really hyper local, whether it's, certain, if you work with local businesses, it could be like a chamber of commerce. If you work with certain industries, it can be, certain industry or trade organizations or networking groups. But really thinking about, who am I trying to reach? Who's going to really benefit from it? And if I could get, instead of having 1,000 of just random generic listeners across the globe, if I could have 100 of these people, who are those people? And then, getting in front of them, whether that is a direct message or whether that is, leveraging and leaning on some sort of emails or newsletters, getting specific about how we're getting this information out there, is a critical part of it, actually landing with the right types of people.
Quick question, Hector. And now, have you tried Medium? I see. I would lean more towards Medium than Substack. I don't know why, but
Medium is okay,
yeah,
and Medium is a great place that is a great place to just publish. What is the difference between Medium and Substack? The biggest difference is the ability to capture people's emails, right?
exactly.
And develop a platform that you can actively market and send to.
Yeah.
Medium, years ago they had sort of the search engine sort of, they were a leader there. The challenge with search engine is that, in my opinion and experience, it just takes too long for people to see the results that they want, and it's very if I were to, if I were to give recommendations, I would say that if you're going to spend that time building on Medium, you might as well just build your own SEO and your own kind of domain authority. And if you want to post it to Medium as well, because you want to tap into the readership that is sort of there.
Yeah.
I think I wouldn't, dissuade you from that.
I have both. I really haven't used it, but I do have both, so I just want to see your take on it.
Yeah. That's what I would say. Substack really sort of allows you, and it doesn't even have to be Substack, but just some platform where you can capture their email. I think is critical.
Okay.
So what else do we have here? So then, I mean, after that, it's really, my next thing is like iterating and adjusting, because obviously there are some people who they don't give it enough time. There's that classic meme of, giving up right before the diamonds or the jewels. And I think that's an important thing to note as well. And also, it doesn't have to be, episode 1,000 before they start to see results. I was saying before, Michael, that a lot of people, most podcasts don't reach episode 7. About half only make it to episode 25, and about 1% make it to episode 50. And so the thing about that is that if we don't give it enough time, we don't have enough repetitions to sort of make adjustments. And I think too many people, they look up and go, oh, this isn't working, when really they just needed to iterate and be consistent a little bit more. But when doing that, and when you have, the right sort of premise, we talked about the foundation being, talking to the right people, knowing who our audience is going to be, positioning ourselves the right way, making sure that we are occupying a certain spot in their brain, a certain value that we can provide, and then making sure that we have the platform that sort of, cultivates and allows them to move into our, funnel, if you will. Then everything is set up, and now we can, if we can bring people in via the guest playbook opportunity, and run it through that way, our pipeline playbook, or we can run the industry celebrity playbook, depending on where they're at in the business. But at least you can sort of start to go, here are things that, here are ways that we can manufacture results. We know that we're not just hoping that someone finds the podcast and hoping that someone, listens to it and ends up becoming a client. These are sort of ways that you can sort of force the issue, if you will, or at least start to create some sustainable and replicatable sort of processes around it.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's it. Now you've got two choices. Obviously, first is to go out there and implement and execute it. Any questions, Michael, on that, on any of the specifics or anything that you wanted to double tap on?
Not really. I sort of, we spoke many times before, so I understand how this works in a lot of ways. It's just a matter of me just doing it more than anything else. You can always talk about it. I could explain to somebody, but my thing now, I just have to focus and sit down and start putting in the work.
Right.
And I think that's for a lot of creators, especially the new ones or the ones that get burned out. Think that you do it for a couple of times and okay, something else comes up more important, you think. But you have to be dedicated to it. And you just have to set up a time to do it. And that's my focus now, is just to figure out a topic that I enjoy, but other people will enjoy it too, that can get some value out of it.
Yeah. I mean, it really is about doing it. And sort of the challenge is that there are a lot of moving pieces, and it's oftentimes that this is a part of the business, but not the entire business.
Yeah.
And that becomes a challenge when someone is trying to put it all together. And so I'm going to send this replay out. And this obviously is for you as well, Michael, but I'll share it. One thing is you have total, you can definitely do all of this. But to your point, it takes time, and there's a lot of sharp turns, a lot of blind spots, and a lot of things that can make it take even longer, right? Given how long you've invested into it already, or how much time people have put into the show. There's a lot there. And so we've tried to figure out, how do we shortcut, how do we create a, what we call, an accelerator, or the little Mario Kart, speed ramps that you go off of that can accelerate you through the process. And so we put together a $10,000 consulting day. We call it our VIP day. It's a 1-day session where we come out, figure out what's the strategy to make sure that you're profitable. What are the systems and the workflows that you need to be able to put in place? And then also we help set up the studio and design, everything. So that way you're set up to start recording. And so in addition to that strategy day, though, it also includes 8 episodes of video production. And so we'll actually, when we're out there, we'll record as much that we can. In the, one day we'll spend sort of going over the strategy. The second day, for part of the half day, we'll try and get as much recording done as possible. So that way people can come out of the, a 1.5, 2 day sort of thing with months worth of content production. We help implement all of our playbooks and then give people a sort of a shopping list if they need it to sort of upgrade their studio.
Now, how far do you travel?
Continental US is where we're traveling right now.
Okay.
And all that's sort of covered in there. As part of the Black Friday one, we're cutting the investment in half for anybody who does it. So it's only a $5,000 dollar investment. And the guarantee that I'm putting in for it is that we'll make sure that the show is profitable. And so we have a 2x guarantee. And so we'll make sure that you make at least $10,000. Usually it's a couple of clients, or however many clients that is, over the first quarter, over the 90 days.
90 days. Okay.
We'll produce the show until you do.
Okay.
As well. We have 5 spots, so I put that on there as well because there's some travel as well. But I'll send you the link, Michael, and that as well.
And definitely, if I know somebody, do you mind if I share that link with them?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you wanted to team up and do it together, something like that, I'm happy to figure out that as well. Otherwise, I think we're coming up on the hour here. So
Oh yeah.
if you have any questions or Michael, things that you want to touch on more, happy to stick around and do that.
Oh
Otherwise,
no, then I'm just glad you're back. I missed you for a year or so. So I know
yeah,
you went through some personal things and everything too. So I
went through some
understand that.
personal stuff, and I've got to get better at I was just in the lab. We were just tinkering and working through client stuff, and so
Yeah.
now I'm sort of coming back and I would never say that I'm like Moses, but almost like coming back down the hill with the tablets. It's like I feel like I've got some answers after going through that with a number of shows and
Yeah.
like personal stuff too.
Yeah.
So yeah, excited about that.
That's good. So I'm glad, like I said, I'm glad you're back, and I definitely, listen to you on the